Welcome to part 4 in our tutorial series on how to develop a Contras-like game with free visual engine Gdevelop. In this video, we will learn on how to shoot bullets, at a certain fire rate, in the directions supported by Contra, and for which we have already implemented the animations in the previous episode. We will also create some effects when firing to spice up the visuals, and we will finally introduce some basic sound effect when shooting the bullets. But first, let's check what we have done in the previous video. We had a small bug with the falling animation, where some capsule bullets were being displayed due to an error in the sprites that we have corrected. Okay, seems that the bug is not yet fully solved. Let's check the animations once more. They seem to be correct. Let's check the events. Yes, the problem seems to be located on the event that plays the animation while the character is falling. We are pointing to the wrong animation. In this case it is playing the animation 2, when it should actually the number 8. Let's change it and check. Let's start with the shooting. First thing that we have to remember is that Contra has different weapons, which means that some of the properties of our shooting mechanics should be associated with the gun. This means that some of the variables associated with the behavior should be included in the gun. For that we need to use object or instance variables that are directly associated with a specific object and not with the overall game. Click on the gun, and if you look at the properties pane on the left, you will see toward the bottom of the screen that Gdevelop is listing the variables associated with the object, which in this case is still blank. Click on the icon with a box and arrow pointing up to go to the dialog window for the instance variables, and then click the button Edit Object Variables, which are the templates on which the instance variables for the object instantiated. Create the variables, has fired, fire direction and fire rate, or any other name that you could prefer to call yours, and then click on the button Apply to exit and go back to the scene view. Has fired will be used to hold if we have shot or not. Fire direction will hold the direction in which the player will be shooting based on the keys that have been pressed to control it. Fire rate is how many bullets we can shot per second and how much we need to wait before being able to shot again. This will be used in conjunction with an object timer associated with the gun object. Now, let's create our first bullet. For that we need to create a new object, by click on the Add Object, or by right-clicking on the canvas and choose the option Add Object. Since we are creating a bullet, we will create a sprite object, that we will name Bullet. Click on the Add Animation, and then, instead of clicking on the Add button, select Edit with Piskel option. This will open the Piskel editor and we will create our bullet. In our case, we have opted for a simple circle shape. Rename it, by click on the name in the top bar, and then save the bullet. You will be sent back to Gdevelop, and before exiting the object creation windows, let's edit the pivot points for the bullet. Drag the red cross to the center of the bullet and then click OK to close. Click Apply to make sure that the changes that we have performed are correctly translated to the object bullet. Usually in video games, when you are firing a bullet, you shoot it from a specific point associated with the gun, as to make it consistent to shooting. To be able to do that, we need to implement a reference on each of the animation sprites where we are specifying the place where an hypothetical bullet would be fired from. So let's double-click once more, on the gun object, and then scroll down to the Edit Points button. Click it. In the new window, click on Add Point to add a new point to the image. In our case we have named it Fire Bullet. If you look at the top left corner, you will see that Gdevelop has added a new small cross to represent the new point. Click on it and drag it to the muzzle of the gun. You can see that we have let the two blue buttons activated, the one that says Apply Changes to All Animations, and the second Apply Changes to All the Frames with the animation. If you look throughout all the animations, you will see that our new image point has been added to all of them. But, you can also see, that depending on the firing animation, in some cases the point can be in the wrong place. So double check the animations as to set the image point in the right place for each of the animations. You can navigate through the different animations by selecting them from the drop-down box in the window. In case you want also to check it through the frames, you have another box that allows you to choose each frame within the boundaries of each animation. When finished, click Close to go back to the scene view. Time to create some events. Let's go the Events tab. Before we forgot it, we need to initialize the variables associated with the gun, which are now instance variables as they are in an object instanced in the game. Has fired is set to 0, fire direction is set to 02, and fire rate to 0.25, which will be the time between shot bullets. Now, let's tell Gdevelop if we have shot a bullet or not. Let's copy from the initializing section the event associated with setting has fired, and let's copy it to each of the events where we are checking if the fire button is pressed or not. If it is pressed, then has fired is set to 1, if not to 0. Create a new event, and in the condition let's check the value of gun's instanced variable has fired. We also want the bullets to be created at a certain rate, so that means that we will have to control how many times we are able to create new bullets. If you remember, we have created an object variable named fire rate which is focused in keeping this information. To be able to use it, we need to use an object timer, which is a timer that works within the scope of the object. For that, create a new condition, and select the gun object, then in the search box type timer, and select from the list, the option value of timer. Gdevelop will ask you to name the timer that you want to use and the value that we want to check the timer with. In the timer name, just enter a name to be used. In our case, we will be naming it next fire, and for the value, we want to use the value of the instance variable fire rate. For that we need to type the name of the object, which is gun, and then after the point variable followed by the name of the variable that we want to access. We have our fire rate implemented. Now we can actually create the bullet because we are able to see if we are firing or not. First, let's reset the timer as to guarantee that we are starting from 0 again. After, let's select the bullet object, and then from the search bar, type create and select the create object. This will tell Gdevelop to create an instance of the bullet. In order to be able to create it, we need to provide the position on the screen where it needs to be created, and optionally the layer. The screen positions will be based on the fire bullet image point that we have created for the gun. So we can use the property points and pointy with the name of the image point created. For the layer, you can set it to the foreground or to the game, or to any other layer that you could be interested in creating. If we were to run now the game, we would see that the bullet when fired, would stay in the same place as there was no movement associated to it. So after its creation, we need to apply a force on the bullet that will make her move. Add a new action, choose the bullet object, and then in the search bar type force. From all the options displayed choose add force angle. This will allow us to apply a certain amount of force on the object, following a certain direction defined by the angle, and that in our case will come from the gun's variable fire direction, using the variable method. Then we need to tell how fast the bullet will travel, which in this case will be 1000 pixels per second. Finally, you can see that there are two buttons with two different options, Instante and Permanent. Basically, Instante is a force that is applied for the time of frame and then disappears. Permanent is force that is constant throughout the duration of the life of the object. In this case, we want the force to be permanent, but feel free to play around with the two types to see by yourself the differences between the two types of force. Click OK to apply and close the windows. So, by now, we have implemented the shoot function with a fire rate associated with the gun object. Just to be sure that it will be working correctly, let's go to the beginning of scene event and add a function to reset the timer next fire, as to make sure that it starts correctly initialized. Add an action and select the gun object, then in the search box type reset, and type next fire in the name of the timer. Click OK to close and go back to the scene view. Let's test drive the system and see what will happen. OK, we can shoot, once, twice, and if we hold the fire button, we can see that the bullets are being shot with the right fire rate. If we flip the character, the bullets are still going in the same direction, as we have not yet implemented the modification of the fire direction. The same happens with the vertical shooting. But we can see that the bullets are being shot from the right point in the gun. The same happens with we try shooting diagonally. OK, time to implement the shooting direction. The first thing that we need to do is to modify the object variable fire direction with the correct value depending on the combination of keys are being pressed at each time. But we also need to understand what angles needs to be specified to Gdevelop as to have the bullets being shot in the right direction. We have made this summary with the angles needed, after a lot of tries and errors, so these will be the angles that we will take as reference for each of the possible combination of keys. So, let's look for the event that manages the shooting while moving. We can see that we have all the events that are managing if the fire button is pressed, and if we are holding or not the up button. These will be some of the places that we will have to update the fire direction. But for now, let's go the option where the fire button is not pressed. Let's create a sub-event, where we are adding two sub-events to check if the player is pressing the left or the right key. If the left key is pressed, then this means that the character is point to the left of the screen, which means that it should shoot to the left, or at an angle of 180 degrees. If the right key is pressed, then we want to shoot to the right and the angle is 0, which is the value that we have to set the fire direction instance variable. Let's copy those two sub-events and paste them below the event where we are testing if the fire button is pressed and the up key is pressed too. Since we are moving, this means that we will want to shoot diagonally to the left and to the right. For that to happen, we need to change the fire direction to 225 degrees for the left and minus 45 degrees for the right. Repeat the same process for when the down key is pressed, and in this case the angles for the fire direction will be 135 for the left and 45 for the right. Again, hit the Run button to preview the current status. It seems that we are able to shoot in all the directions that we were intended to. But there is a glitch when turning and pressing the fire button. Something seems to be missing. The firing in vertical seems to be broken too. We can fix part of the bug by setting the direction in the main event for the key up being pressed and setting fire direction to -90 and there so, shoot upwards. Paste it too, in the main event for shooting upwards, but when the player is not moving. Let's test it. And we can now shoot to the sky. Still have the bug with the fire direction not changing when turning with the fire button pressed. Let's inspect the code to try to see if we are able to understand what is going wrong. That is not easy, as the code has already have grown slightly. But it seems that the problem is being generated, with the changes of directions and specifically with the fire button pressed. Which means that it is probably being caused from the event testing if the fire button is pressed while the player is not moving. Under this event, we are not setting any direction to the left or the right, so it could be the cause. Let's copy our pair of events for the left and key pressed events, and let's paste them under the fire button is pressed. Let's run again the game. And everything seems to be fine now. It is a shooting frenzy. Time to spice up the effects. Let's create a couple of particle systems that will be displayed when the bullet is being fired, as some kind of muzzle flash, and then once the bullet is flying away, let's add to it a trail of particles that will follow the bullet. For that, let's add the Add Object option on the left pane. Select the option Particles Emitter and in the new window, set the name of the particle system to Muzzle Flash and customize the options to the ones in the video, or to yours in case you want to test your own version. Once finished, click Apply to close. Let's add another particle emitter. In this case bullet trail. Set your own configuration, or follow the video to see the ones that we have used. Once finished, click Apply to finish. Now, that we have the two particle systems created, we need to instance them when firing. For that, go to the event where we are creating the bullet, and immediacy afterwards, create a new action for the muzzle flash object with the function createObject. As done previously, use the same image point that was created on the gun for the bullet. In the video, we have made an error as we have inverted the name, the good one if fire bullet, and will see the error a couple of minutes ahead. Let's repeat the same step for the bullet trail, but now there is a difference, because the bullet trail needs to follow the bullet. We need to add a force to it with the same angle that was used for the bullet, fire direction. For the speed, let's use a slower speed as to have the trail lagging behind the object. And the force is to be permanent too. Let's check everything. And we are shooting. The trail and the muzzle flash are out the right position due to the misspell in the game of the image point that we'll fix in the video ahead. So let's fix the name for the image point to fire bullet. Let's try it again. Everything seems to be running fine. Let's fine-tune some parameters of the particle systems. Better. Now, time to juice up a little bit with a basic sound effect when shooting. Supposedly Gdevelop comes with JFXR, but we were not able to run it to produce the sounds, so we decided to use BFXR and use this tool to make the sound effects. For that, let's go to Google and let's search for BFXR. Click in the first link that will take you to the page. You could be running an online version with Flash, but in our case we will download the Windows 10 version. Unpack and run it. This is not a lesson in how to use BFXR but to actually generate good sounds. You can do it manually by adjusting all the parameters in the tool, or you can just copy the presets buttons that will randomly create values in a predefined genre. So in our case, we clicked on the laser shot effect, until we were able to get one that sounded correct for the game. Save on the disk. Now, let's play the sound effect. Go to the Event tab where we have created the bullet and effects. Add a new action and in the search box type play. Select play a sound from the list. In the sound reference, click on Add Sound and select the audio file that we downloaded. Set the volume to 50 or less. Click Apply to close. Before running the game, we need to solve a potential problem that we missed when we first created the sprite bullet, and that after some internal tests we were able to identify. Our bullets are currently living forever in our game. We are cutting them from being refreshed. To fix it, let's go to the bullet properties, and then click on the Add Behavior and look for the behavior Destroy outside of the screen, and set the range to some number that adapts better to their situation. Let's test it. We have a fully shooting project with special effects that starts to look cool. In the next video we will start setting the bases for a level, with the camera following and some of the first enemies. We hope that you have liked this video. If it has been the case, consider subscribing, giving a like and clicking on the notification button. If you have any question, problem or comment, don't hesitate in putting a comment and we will answer as fast as we could. See you in the next video.